And we would, if anybody who doesn't want to be on this record, they can switch off their videos, although we would love to see you. And I would love to also ask the participants to put their, what happened? Is it all good?
No, it's good.
Yeah. To put their mute, to the audio on mute, so we can, there will be no interrupt, only the speakers should have their speakers on. And coming to that, I would actually love to also extend a big thanks to all the current supporters and partners who are joining us, and welcoming the new people as well who are participating in this webinar today. I'm Nazeeha Saeed, journalist and Arabic media coordinator in Outright, and I'm also responsible for some of the MENA region projects that Outright is doing there. We have the pleasure today to have with us Pascal Kolakis, co-founder and mental health advisor from Mosaic, MENA Organization for Services, Advocacy, Integration, and Capacity Building, and Dinah Ash, founder and executive director of Haven for Artists, both from Beirut. Welcome, and thank you so much for agreeing to being with us today to take us in a tour in Beirut to tell us what's happening there and how's the situation on the ground. I would like to say that our hearts was always in Beirut, and since the 4th of August, our hearts are in Beirut. We are full of sadness, rage, disappointment, and anger. Beirut is not only for the Lebanese people, it's part of our history and present in the region, and it's also for the movement in the MENA region. It's a very important element in the whole movement. And we would like to start actually by asking what is happening today in Beirut as a general question. I would, if Dinah, can you start with that, please?
So in general, yesterday there was an extension on the emergency which gives control to the military for Beirut until the end of the year, December 31st. With added pressure from the citizens and pretty much people living in the residence of Beirut. They had done an official lockdown and curfew up until 6 p.m. till 6 a.m. with a lot of pressure from activists and particularly store owners and restaurants and bars that had not just lost ridiculous amounts of support from the government due to COVID, but from the financial crisis and now the bomb. We've lost pretty much our strongest sector, which is our tourism and hospitality sector, which also inadvertently is the main area of safe spaces for LGBTQI and migrant workers and women living in Beirut. So what they've inadvertently done have removed the largest area of safe spaces that we had, destroyed any high income range that we could have had to restore our financial crisis, and created curfews so that citizens couldn't mobilize and create protests to refuse the system in which they are founded. So this is currently the state we're in. All of us are distributing and trying to assist and assess and trying to see how we could reach out to everyone that is affected. Sadly, there's a lot of people affected. This will be a very long and strenuous effort from all the activists and NGOs and independent initiatives that are working, especially since we've come further and further away from the concept of a functional government body. The more we go out and work, the more we realize that if we don't coordinate, no one knows what's going on because the government has no idea. So we've just teamed up. Most organizations, we're all working on WhatsApp and Facebook and Instagram and Telegram, and we're on 500 different channels because we need to make sure we're constantly connected and communicating, because the government is only here to oppress. And even if you're starving, they'll still, they'll haul you off to jail because to them, they don't think that that's their responsibility.
Pascal, would you like to focus more on the humanitarian situation?
Yeah, actually, like Dana was saying, we already were in a very, very difficult situation with the COVID and the economic crisis, and people were trying to do something with the revolution in October 2019, but still the government found a way to repress everything that was happening. So now with the blast, even people are more in deep with being without shelter, without food, without really basic, if you want, rights and basic things for them to keep their dignity. Adding to that, whenever people are trying to help out or to do something positive, there's still the repression that Diana was talking about from the government in one form or another. So on a humanitarian level, it's not only the people in Beirut who got affected by the blast that are really needing help, it's people all over Lebanon. So more specifically in Beirut. So it's not only one city that is affected, it's the whole country that is affected. So so it's really difficult, very difficult for us and for anyone who is in this situation. So,
yeah. Would you like to also add, yeah, we have a general view of how is the situation, but how is the LGBTIQ community?
Yes, of course. So as you already know, in Lebanon, the LGBTIQ plus persons are from the very vulnerable population. So with the Article 534 that might enjail the person, up until all the social, if you want, aspect of being able to come out or being able to be who you are. So now, with the blast, people have, because they live actually in the areas that are like poor neighborhoods, like in Karantina, in Jaitawi, in Kerm Zaytoun. So these areas were affected. Many of them lost their shelters or their house, or they lost their belongings. Some of them had to come back to live with their parents, which is not easy, especially if the parents are oppressing their children, so they cannot come out to their parents. They are still, you know, they are living in oppression, plus the trauma of the blast. So, so the needs is not only on a material level, so which is very, very important, like having shelter, food, sanitary kits, etc. But it's also on the protection of all these persons who were able somehow to maybe find a safe space where they can be who they are. So, well, today they lost their space too. So within everything that is happening in Lebanon. So it's horrible.
That's very sad. Dinah, like maybe Pascal focused on the situation of the community, but you have been also working with the community since the blast happening. Can you tell us more? What are you doing exactly? And like how did the Haven for Artists just flip the work from Haven for Artists to humanitarian work?
So it was, we were in our office when the blast went off, and we were all together as a team. And of course, we scrambled and all ran home to check on our families and to check on our the safety of our friends and our close members. And it was sad because when we left the office and we all went to our homes and saw that our homes were also destroyed, because we had that innate feeling of like, I want to rush to my secure, safe space. And we all kind of ran home only to discover that our houses were more impacted than our office. They were completely, my house has been 3 weeks, sorry. They just installed glass, but they didn't get the window to work. So now I don't have windows that open, but I have some kind of security, which I'm kind of grateful for nonetheless. But still, so, and I'm in Kerm Zaytoun, so I'm a little further off than most people that have been extremely hit, and we still got a ridiculous amount. So what Haven did is the second day after we all kind of calmed down, we went straight down to Madam Khail and started cleaning the streets. And as we were doing so, we started meeting a lot of LGBTQI people that we know personally as being artists or as friends or something from the community, saying they didn't have a place to go, they didn't have a place to live. So we literally left our broomsticks and headed straight up to the Haven offices, and we converted it to a shelter. We have 4 bedrooms in there and a living room, dining room, 2 bathrooms, because that was our office space. So within, I think it was less than 24 hours, we had enough mattresses to have 8 people, enough moune, we had the stove and everything brought in. And we were able to furnish the space and have 8 people living there that had, there were migrant workers, women and LGBTQI who had not just lost their homes, but not have anything left. They left with the clothes on their back. We were able to coordinate, because what's happening now is that Haven, we don't know how we became so capable of helping in a humanitarian, because we are an arts organization, but I think it was important that all of us kind of hit the ground running. There were two kinds of people, and we always say, like, there are two kinds of people that react in a crisis. You either react by running directly to the streets to help, or you run directly to your laptop and write a proposal. So what we did is we kind of avoided the laptops as much as possible, mainly because my laptop got a little damaged because I was in the office. And what we did is we just converted the shelter, we moved in people, we started coordinating with other people in the community. Doctors Without Borders and all these organizations started reaching out. What we did was we got a lot of in-kind donations, and we distributed every single day. We distributed thousands of diapers and hot meals and wune for the last 3 weeks. And we've received a lot of funding through initiatives of friends and artists and creatives living all over the world. And what they did is they launched their own GoFundMe, and they would donate that money to Haven. We didn't even think to do a GoFundMe. With us, it was just like scattering in our own pockets to see how much money we can get, because we were in that minute and we were just active. So they started doing it, and the next thing we know, we started doing cash assistance. Firstly, we started rent assistance to make sure that people that have their homes can stay there, can still continue to pay, because they most likely had lost their jobs. So we started covering rents. And then we, of course, this is all with diapers, food, hot meals being delivered to everybody's houses every day. This includes sanitary pads that was being distributed to the migrant workers. And we were cooking 100 meals a day, taking down to the Kenyan embassy to ensure that the protesters in front of the Kenyan embassy were also fed. We gave them diapers and set
Can
a
you
napkin.
speak a little bit more about this, about the protest in front of the Kenyan embassy?
Yeah, so there's three. There's one in front of the Ethiopian embassy, one in front of the Kenyan embassy, and one in front of the Sudanese embassy. And all three of them are being supported by Haven in what we can do. By coordinating with This Is Lebanon, ARM, and Igna, we've been able to, if not directly go to them, but what we would do is we would create enough support as far as food and clothing is concerned, and we would coordinate with the organizations, okay, who's heading down, what is lacking. Let's say they're taking down food, we would take down diapers and sanitary pads and mattresses. If they were taking down pillows, we would take down coolers and water and so on and so forth. So we made sure that, and one of our friends, actually, Lisa Lux, who came here, took down a couch. She said, if you're going to protest, you need to feel like a queen. So she took couches in front of every embassy so that people could sit in front of couches and protest, because they're going to be there for a very long time. So that was
background. These protests are being taking place in front of the embassies because people are asking their governments
to go home,
to take care of them and take them home because of COVID, and now because of the blast.
Even before that, because before COVID, there was a financial crisis, which stopped employers, or as they call themselves, sponsors, from paying their domestic helpers. So what happened is you've got 6-7 months of no payment, no salary for these women. And they're forced into these extremely abusive households, because the fact of the matter is, if you're working for free, you're already modern day slavery. And then on top of that, you can't leave, and they have your passport, and you have your autonomy and agency taken away from you. So what's been happening is that we're coordinating with these organizations to ensure, A, they have a shelter if they were to leave these houses. B, how do we get them out of this country? And we also worked on just making sure that there's sustainability, that when they finally do leave, they have dollars in their pocket, not a bunch of lira they can't do anything with. So we actually were able to assist 2 women in particular, 2 women from Ghana that had ran away from their abusive households. And they've somehow heard about us, I don't know how, and they came and they stayed in the shelter. They actually were paid in dollars, $100 a week to cook for the migrant center. So they left with $500 each in their pocket, a fully paid flight ticket, and 3 weeks of their own private bedroom with air conditioning. And that was the happiest moment of our life, because they left yesterday and we were able to coordinate their return. So they have fully returned and they're repatriated. They are officially in Ghana, and they're finally safe. The rest of the people that were in our shelter have been relocated. We've rented apartments for them, and we're paying a year in advance for their apartments. And we're also giving them cash dollars so that they can have autonomy and agency to choose. We give them everything as far as food and everything that they might need for sustainable standard living, which is what I think is the bare minimum that we can do. And then we give them cash so that they have that choice for autonomy and agency, because I do believe if you've survived something like this and you've lost everything, the least I can do is ensure you still have purchasing power to choose how to and what is your priority for comfort.
Among all of this mess, there is still good news. Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes, yes.
Dinah, can you give us a number, like how many people do you support, or could you support?
Yeah, well, the thing is, we we didn't know we could even do it. So we thought we could, yeah, we're going to support because we need to support, but we never had a thing in mind of how are we going to help them? What are we going to do? We just got onto the ground and started doing it. In the first week, we received $3,450 in cash assistance. So people donated via Western Union and PayPal. It was a total of $3,450. We assisted 31 people with their rents for 2 months each. We then received 18 large bags of food parcels for families, which are for 4 persons per family for up to 2 months worth of food. So we gave 18 of those bags. We distributed 1,230 sandwiches, 2,334 hot meals, including 100 different meals sent every single day to Ignaligna to be distributed to the migrant community. We distributed 43 complete hygiene kits to families and mothers that had just had children. We distributed 854 packets of sanitary kits to mothers and women all over the city, including migrant workers and LGBTQI. We distributed 126 packets of diapers, mostly focused on the migrant community and the refugee community. We distributed 6 mattresses and 12 pillows down to the protesters, and over 19 large bags of clothing and 6 million lira, which equates to around $1,000 worth of medication. We also did our best by offering the 8 persons shelter and repatriating 2 of them. And that's been the last 3 weeks. Yesterday, we assessed 7 businesses for people owned over the age of 50, mostly women and LGBTQI. And we've renovated 7 storefronts in Karmez Zaytoun. They will be done on Monday. We are also today distributing 6 more cash assistance, and tomorrow we have 12 rent assistance, and tomorrow we have 12 cash assistance, totaling at $500 each.
Thank you so much,
basically
Dr. for what you're doing. Thank you so much. What about Mosaic, Pascal?
Well, yes, so we had maybe a slightly different response. We were not in Madam Khayel and Jamaiza on the streets, but we're trying to offer as much help as possible to our beneficiaries. So what we did is at first we did not stop operating. So the following day, even though like Diana was saying, so the office was a little bit damaged, not very much, but also our families and our homes were also damaged. So what we did is we called our registered beneficiaries to check on them and see and do some sort of needs assessment. And some others did call us. So we reached around 250 persons, where we did like some sort of a PFA. So throughout, so talking to them, asking about them, seeing their needs, etc. So basically, most of them needed, of course, cash and shelters and food. So what we are able to do up until today is that we were able to help 80 persons with shelter, so cash for shelter. We are in the process also of finding money, so we're going to get some money also to help the others, because 80% of the 250 need cash for shelter. So whether their homes were destroyed or they are not able to pay the rent for the upcoming months because of the financial situation. 50% needed also help with food, so we also had cash for food. And 40% asked for a psychological intervention, because usually in Mosaic, this is one of the services we offer related to mental health and social also follow-up. So we were able to also provide emergency sessions for people who got affected by the blast, but also people who asked for it. And we are in the process of starting next week a more long-term therapy for people who had symptoms who needed more than just, a really quick intervention of 3 or 4 times. So basically, this is what we are doing right now. Of course, this is next to all of our services that did not stop. So whether it's legal advice, whether it's anything else related to the needs of our beneficiaries and anyone else, it's still ongoing in the process.
Well,
so it's different than what Dana and the team are doing.
Sure, all efforts are, I think, needed at the moment. Either it's different or, so LGBTIQ community usually are not recognized in Lebanon and also in the region, but in Lebanon, the law, the society, the government doesn't recognize them. But they were actually a very, I would say, they were there when the crises are happening, we, like Dinah and Pascal, you are an example for that, and other organizations as well that's not representing here in this call today or in this webinar. And so how is this contract, like, between you are not recognized in the country, but you are from the first ones who were on the streets and helping people and helping with the humanitarian situation? Like, how do you comment on that, Dinah?
I'm always asked that question, and even before the blast, and I don't want to call it a blast because this was a massacre. The premise of it is the LGBTQI community never needed permission to be on the front lines because we are on the front lines of oppression every single day. So it is impossible for us not to just be involved, but the main components of every struggle. Simply because our life is a struggle, our everyday encounters, going down to the store. So some of the issues that we've started also realizing with the distributions is when it comes to trans women and trans men who might not be able to come out during the day to receive aid. So we've been going to their houses to ensure that they don't feel any more taken away from their safety and security, because the one spaces they used to be able to go to are no longer present at night. So they have been shut in, so to speak. A lot of the young women that used to, work in sex work in order to continue their livelihoods have obviously lost that due to COVID. So you have so many different layers now in the city, whether it be the financial crisis or otherwise. And to eliminate the LGBTQI community by assuming that, as the government does, of not saying, oh, well, they don't exist, so therefore we don't help them, it makes our reaction a little bit more aggressive. And it makes our reaction a little bit more necessary than them. Because we think of the migrant community, we think of the women, we think of sanitary pads being super overpriced and taking half of your salary to be able to buy one pack. We think of over 300,000 worth of diapers that you have to pay a month. That's half of rent. We think of these because we understand oppression and what it does to the psyche, to your life, and to your security. So it feels natural for us to refuse it and to ensure that everyone else doesn't feel the same thing that we do.
Amazing. Pascal?
Yeah, I totally agree with Dana. I mean, since the beginning, the LGBT community was involved in any action that was taken in Lebanon, whether against the government in 2015 with the crisis of
trash.
The trash. Sorry, yes. So
it's still there, though. Don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. Even more so, actually, during the few days of the massacre, like Dana called it, I totally agree. You would see people like like wiping the glass, everything, trying to do something, and then the trash is all over the streets. Like, please come pick up the trash. This is all we're asking, is come pick up the trash. We're cleaning, we're doing everything. Please do something as government. So and after all, the LGBT community is part of the Lebanese population, and don't think that the other population is living like, that the government is recognizing that each of us is a person. So there's not such a big gap, even though, of course, the LGBT community is more vulnerable, they have less of rights, of course, but still, people coming together, especially during these circumstances, you do not look at these, if you want, what they want you to see as differences, because we do not see them as differences. People do not see these as differences. It's the policies, how they deal with it, that makes this gap between a community and another community. So people, between each other, there's no difference. So people are here to help each other. And this is what anyone would do. So also the LGBT community, like Dana said, so they struggle every day, and they understand struggle more than anyone else.
Yeah. Corrupt government, economical crisis, COVID, and then the blast. What is needed now, Pascal? What
immigration? And actually, it's not a joke, because unfortunately, most of the youth, especially the youth in Lebanon, are thinking about immigrating, are thinking about starting their life somewhere else. Whether they are from the LGBT community or not from the community, each one is thinking, how can they leave the country? And this is very sad. many would like to stay, and it's like, you know, this love and hate relationship with the country. So so this is just a side. So this is something, it's a struggle that all the youth are living in. So more so with the LGBT community, because of the protection, many would seek also asylum elsewhere, because they want to start their life without fear of being put in prison or killed or tortured or let go by their family. So, but the needs right now is first shelter for people who lost their homes, and also shelter for people who are not able to pay their rent, which is mostly most of the LGBT community, because also of the financial crisis and them not being able to find a job. And even if they have a job, it's either half pay, and it's nothing really. Compared to the dollars, it's nothing with the financial crisis. We also have needs, of course, for food. We have needs for basic things. So some people have lost everything. All right, so but basically it's protection, shelter, food, standard things like Diana was saying. I think this is the main need right now for the LGBT community, at least with the people we are working with. Now later on, of course, maybe they will need something else, but right now this is very, very important: shelter, food, standard things.
Dinah, do you have something to add to this?
So I agree. Shelter is the most important thing at the moment, simply because 300,000 homes were destroyed. There's not much we can renovate as much as we renovate. We are coordinating. There's the Queer Relief Fund, which was launched by Sandra Milhem. So Sandra is working on renovation of LGBTQI homes, and I'm working on cash assistance to those homes, and of course long-term rent if their houses that were destroyed were in rent. So we pay up to a year in advance for their rents, just to give them that kind of stability long enough for them to not feel like, oh, I'm going to pay you a month and you have 1 month to find the job in a country that has over 55% unemployment currently. It kind of seems like I'm throwing them into the deep end. So we are trying the best, especially since, like Pascal mentioned, there's the devaluation of the lira. It's at 300, it's lost 80% of its value. So when someone from the States, like a bunch of people have done, which is send me $1,000, that $1,000 makes it 700,000 per person. That's $100 a person is 700,000, which is enough for their rent for a whole month. Wow. So sadly to say, the currency right now being low allows us to make sure we can cover rents, because legally the landlords cannot change it to dollar. They still have to pay it in lira. So we're using that avenue to ensure to pay a year in advance so that they stop worrying about it, and so that the landlord can't pigeonhole them later and try to force them and coerce them into paying more when they don't have that avenue. So when you pay a year in advance, landlord is super giddy because they have the money and they feel like, okay, I'm done. And at the same time, that person and the individual living in this house or this family no longer has that fear of every time the door knocks. I know that there is a third fund. No, we're 3 in total technically for the LGBT that were launched on GoFundMe and on PayPal and all of that. And I believe the third one is by Sasha Elijah and Siwar, and they teamed up with Mosaic. I actually wanted to talk to you, Pascal, and see about consolidating our list, because a lot of the trans community is taking cash assistance from us, so that we can see how to make sure, because my fund is like a quarter of that, just so that we can make sure we can keep them both covered as much as possible. Is any financial aid? Every government in the world is so excited to get their hands on our port. Every government in the world. And I'm going to say this because I think everyone needs to hear it. We've been colonized enough. So we are fully aware of what international aid can also stipulate. Because at first it's like, thank God, yes, we need the aid. But what are the strings attached? And that's what's worrying a lot of the humanitarians and the activists that are currently working on the ground. What does this mean when all of these governments are now involved in our internal struggle? And they, whether we like it or not, are validating the government that we're trying to bring down, simply by still meeting with them. Luckily though, due to a lot of pressure from NGOs and activists internationally, we refuse that any aid to go to the Lebanese government. And the aid that has went to the Lebanese government, we've seen how it's been distributed. So we know very well just how horribly they do it. I did a huge rant about the fact that they refuse to give to Syrian, Palestinian, and migrant workers any food assistance that come from foreign governments. If it's coming from our government, they only give to Lebanese, which drove us insane, of course, because then you have, even if you're Lebanese, if you're a trans woman, your name doesn't match your original ID, that means you don't get food. So it becomes this extremely horrible tug of war to just give somebody a food parcel. But the international community has realized that only NGOs should be doing this, the humanitarian relief, which is amazing because Impact Lebanon raised, I believe, $9 million. So all of these are going directly into organizations, grassroots, into the pockets of activists. And because we're all on social media, we are being transparent on the spot. So when I go to Western Union and receive $2,000 from Lara Salman, who's an artist in California, I am on video call with Lara as I go distribute it. So Lara sees her physical money going from hand to hand to hand to hand. That in of itself makes people understand that it's not about funding an NGO. You're not funding my salary because, hey, we are all working for free. We've been working for free and we're going to continue to work for free. Haven is a self-sustainable nonprofit organization and we refuse to be making money off of a crisis. But in the end, it's very important to, when you fund an NGO, you make sure you know what you're funding. How are these assets going to be sent out? And that's why it's great that foreign governments are getting involved by sending this aid, but it worries me about what that could stipulate afterwards. Because the building of the Beirut port now, everybody is having a little bit of a clash about who's going to rebuild it. Some are saying Saudi, some are saying Qatar, some are saying America. Whoever rebuilds it owns it. So here we are.
That leads us actually to the question, like, how can we help? People are attending this webinar, who the organizations they are representing, maybe even people that it's not here with us on the webinar because it's recorded and it will be broadcasted afterwards. How can we help? Pascal?
Yeah, just like Dana was saying, actually, you can help by, of course, sending money, of course, but know where to send them. I mean, Dana just mentioned right now, like 4 or 5 big, if you want, collaborations that are really helping people on the ground, just like we are doing. So these are, for example, people who are using the money to help other people. They are not using it just only to do some etc. So yes, we need the money, and now is the time for it because we don't know what's going to happen in a month. All right, today we are able to get our dollars from OMT. In 2 weeks, maybe we won't be able to get them anymore. So as soon as it's possible, the more people will be able to help. And of course, anything else is welcomed. But basically, it's money because we also want to give people the freedom to use the money like they want. So, of course, shelter is a priority. But then if they want to eat, I don't know, rice and not eat something else, we don't want to just give them rice and for them to eat rice for 1 year. So, so this is, I think, very important.
Dinah, you want to add something?
Exactly what you said. Cash assistance is the most important thing to return autonomy and agency to everybody that's lost everything. I always say that we were at zero. We were not living great here. We were at zero, but we were living week to week, month to month. And now what they've done is they've even taken our ability to do that. So we are now negative 1,000 because we've lost homes, we've lost furniture, we've lost livelihoods, we've lost support, we've lost safe spaces, we lost friends, we've lost 200 people and 7,000 injuries. When people say injuries, we're talking about losing arms, we're losing eyes, we have punctured lungs, we have children that are dying. We had a 15-year-old that died after being 2 weeks in a coma. That didn't count as a death, it counted as an injury. This is where I would continuously say, send money, create autonomy, create agency, make sure you send it to grassroots organizations that are going to ensure it goes directly into the pockets of people. If you're going to send in kind and you feel like that's a way that this is the only way your organization can assist, medication is extremely low right now. Hospitals are hemorrhaging. They cannot afford to buy medication. Most of the supplies that they have are running out consistently. We don't have enough ICUs to handle COVID, much less handle the 7,000 injured. So medical is definitely one of the strongest things. Cash is something we can take on because we can then renovate houses and then give people dollars in their hands so they can make these choices. And that's what we're doing now is making sure everybody has glass. And in Arabic, we say sitra. And that is something that I didn't understand the meaning of that word until I lived for 3 weeks without doors and windows. And I realized just, it doesn't matter as long as you have a law. It's everything.
Yeah. Well, the participants are more welcome to also write the question if they have any question in the chat option, but also we can open the door to questions that if somebody wants to direct the question like personally to our speakers. I have a few more questions, and I would like to have your input in that. Can the international groups, funders, organizations do something other than also funding, like advocacy and working, especially maybe representatives of governments and big organizations, I would say? How can they help, or how you would like them to help? Dinah, you want to start?
Stop funding the riot police. Don't fund the riot police. Don't fund Habesh. The French fund the riot police with tear gas that they don't use in France. They wouldn't use it on their protesters. Why is it acceptable that we have military grade tear gas that hails down? We have protesters being shot with rubber bullets and pick pellets that are being sold by the French and the British to Lebanon. These are the issues that we're having. So it's not enough for governments to say to Lebanese people or this country and say, oh, we're going to send aid to the NGOs, but hey, all that money that we're pumping into the people that are oppressing you is going to continue. That doesn't really hinder much. Please keep your box of medication, but stop sending him pellets, because then I won't need the medication. I don't need the medication if they stop shooting tear gas at us as we're trying to get our wounded out. I don't need medication if I don't have a young man at 23 years old with a massive tear gas being shot directly at his face and stuck between his teeth, breaking his entire jaw. We don't need as much medication if we weren't being physically oppressed. The amount of violence, the Lebanese army on the 8th of August shot assault rifles at protesters. That's what the international community needs to be doing. It needs to be pushing along the premise of how can we continuously keep supporting governmental entities that are only killing. It's not about controlling, because that's the little play that they have. You're controlling a population. You're handling it so it doesn't get out of hand. But it's only getting out of hand when we're getting shot at. When you have a peaceful protest and then you have that kind of reaction, people are going to react negatively by storming. So we can have different avenues of pressuring these the actual military apparatuses to pressure who the military police are, who the parliamentary police are. No one knows who the parliament police are, but they still have funding somehow. Where's that funding coming from? The parliamentary police are an illegal entity. They only protect Nabi Berri. They get funding. Which international government is giving them funding? How do they have AK-47?
Parliament.
So so this is my thing, where it's, please, yes, continue to send aid to organizations, but stop sending money to military apparatuses that you think are there to help the country, when in fact they're the reason the country is in this detriment in the first place.
Well, we have a few questions. I would like to jump to them. Pascal, maybe you answer this question from Mark. If there is any support from Israeli government and or LGBT groups there. I don't think so, but Pascal?
No, we actually, there is no, for us, Israel is the enemy, so there's nothing to say in this, so there's no.
Yeah, I mean, they offered to help, but there were nothing coming, because also the government, I have
no idea if they offered, but of course they did not offer to us. We have no...
yeah, well, yeah, Elise has another question. How can the international corporate sector sit up to help? Dinah?
The corporate sector would be construction material. There was a massive company, I think in Germany or Denmark, that donated glass. The prices are they're extortion here. Like it's really expensive, and because the suppliers are such a minimal number of people, we end up being pigeonholed with extremely high prices, because that's the only option we have. Material, as far as corporations, that would be the best. It would be concrete rebuilding. It'd be pavements for our streets. I call to every massive car company. Hyundai, that's a joke in my opinion. Cars were destroyed all up and down the coast because it was the highway. Hyundai said, we'll fix your car at a reduced rate. What does reduced mean? Their car was reduced to rubble. You need to give them a new car, or give them a new avenue to get a new car. So I would encourage every single corporation out there that obviously has money, because they are for profit, to send in support with actual material replacements. So replace the things that have been destroyed. You don't have to give us money, but if you have that portion of concrete that you can spare, that it doesn't hurt your bottom line, send it in. If you can fix a car for an old man who's lost his house, his store, and his car in 1 20 seconds, second go. Send him a car, send him, metal bars so that we can reinforce his building and create a foundation so they can return to living with dignity.
I would like to also direct this question to you, Dinah, because you're working with, actually both of you works with refugees. Yeah, but maybe Dinah first and then Pascal. There's a question from Devon saying, can you speak to the impact needs within the refugee asylum community in Beirut right now, especially interested in LGBTIQ folks within this population? Dinah?
So I currently have an LGBTQI refugee in the Haven shelter. And our biggest issue, and I think Pascal can actually note more on this because Mosaic works directly as well with a lot of LGBTQI refugees. A big problem I think they're having right now is ill responses from the United Nations. They have no idea where their files are. They have no idea if it's been updated. The UN never checked in on them, never cares. They have to go bang on a door and they usually never get an answer. So it leaves them in this limbo state, which of course doesn't allow them to feel that they can get a job because the country doesn't allow Syrians to work except in, I believe it's cleaning, construction, and labor. Those are literally the three things they're allowed to work in as refugees, which is horrible because those are also the most underpaid, underrespected, and basically are frontline workers, but they're the least paid. So that's the biggest issue that they're having right now, I think, is how are they going to get out of the country if they wanted to? There was a young activist journalist named Ghalia who posted a video on Daraj Media, and she said, my mother called me and said, come to Syria, you're safer here. And I think that statement also goes to show the geopolitics of this entire region and how the youth are running from place to place. And they've made us feel like we're expendable. This region is full of culture, thought, capacity, the ability to do a lot. Obviously, international corporations and how they build in this region has not assisted in how things are going to go forward. There is a monopolization of the situation. But the youth, as far as the asylum seekers, I think are having the hardest time because A, they can't rent on their name, and B, they can't get a job that actually lives up to their degrees or their education or even their understanding of a particular situation. They're not allowed to do it. So I think that's the hardest thing that they're coping with right now.
I would like to direct the question to Pascal to answer. Ribat, are you here to answer that question? Or you have something else to say?
Well, I can answer the question and I had some things to add as well.
Okay.
So if Pascal wants to answer the question first and then I can...
Go ahead, Ribat, go ahead. So that
Ribat is from the same organization as Pascal, it's Mosaic. So he will answer that question about the refugees. Go ahead.
Yeah. So hello everyone, this is Ribat Matou from Mosaic. I'm the programs manager. I just want to answer this question first regarding the refugees. So we in Lebanon receive a lot of refugees from Syria, as Lebanon is considered as a safe haven in the region, although it's not really. However, we had a lot of Syrian refugees here in Lebanon, particularly the LGBTIQ+, who usually would register here to seek asylum or resettlement in a third country. So this process might vary from a few months to many years. A lot of people have to wait for years and years to get resettled, and then they would get no answer. There's a lot of shortage on, I don't know if it's human resources or just negligence from the UN agencies, but they don't usually follow up. We had a lot of refugees who got their resettlement in a third country, I mean, towards the beginning of 2020, but since COVID-19 hit and we had the lockdown in Lebanon and across the globe, many of them were stuck here in Lebanon. So they couldn't get resettled, they couldn't travel since the airport was closed. And ever since that day, they're stuck here without any cash assistance, without any support, because the UN agency think that they did their job and they got their resettlement. However, they're still stuck here, so they don't get any support, whether cash or any other support. At Mosaic, unfortunately, we had to stop our group activities due to physical distancing and social distancing. and those beneficiaries used mainly to count on those activities, on those group activities from which they can benefit from refreshments and transportation fees. So even this was put on hold. So this community had no income anymore. They have no support from the UN agencies, particularly the UNHCR. And there's an economic crisis in Lebanon. The Lebanese pound has lost a lot of its value, etc., etc. So this is the situation of the LGBTIQ+ community. At Mosaic, we provide services to any LGBTIQ+ individuals, regardless of their nationality, Lebanese, host community, migrants, refugees, etc., etc. Now, since we are in this crisis, in this multi-layered crisis in Lebanon, well, first we used to have something called LCRP, the Lebanese Crisis Response Plan, since 2011, given the crisis in Syria. So most of the humanitarian funds usually used to focus on Syrian refugees. So us as a national NGO, we had to, the target population was mainly the Syrian refugees. So 60 to 70% of the target should be Syrian, and the rest would be vulnerable Lebanese. Now, after the financial breakdown, the COVID-19 breakdown, as well as the blast, everybody in Lebanon is considered vulnerable population. So we don't have the segregation anymore between target audience or people of concern. Everyone is eligible to receive support. However, the UN OCHA, the UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, launched a flash appeal a couple of weeks ago, and they invited all actors here in Lebanon to apply to this flash appeal, and they made it clear to include LGBTIQ+ individuals in this appeal. However, surprisingly, only 2 local groups, local organizations were accepted to be granted a fund, and the fund was very minimal. Most of the funds were directed to international NGOs and UN agencies. So we don't have the autonomy, we don't have the independence to appeal for funds in order to act upon the crisis. And it's worth noting that although there are a lot of local initiatives, a lot of international NGOs or local NGOs that are on the ground, on the field, providing services to the affected community or the affected people by the blast, we need always to take into consideration that LGBTIQ+ individuals do not always have access to those services, do not always have access to those goods, etc., etc. If the Lebanese armed forces are distributing food parcels, I wouldn't expect a trans woman, for instance, to go and get this food box from the Lebanese army, or I can't make sure that this initiative is sensitized enough to not to discriminate against this person, or to be sensitive enough and not do any sort of stigma or discrimination. So the excuse is that there are a lot of initiatives, there are a lot of actors on the ground. However, the access to those services is very limited to the LGBTIQ+ community in Lebanon. They can't go anywhere. That's why we try as much as we can to provide a comprehensive services, including health services, sanitary, hygiene kits, food parcels, cash for food, cash for shelter, and rehabilitation.
Yeah. Thank you, Ripa, for this answer. We have a question from Travis. What's the reaction to Macron's hypocritical response and intervention given the history between France and Lebanon? Pascal?
Well, I'm not sure how to answer this. I think Dana can answer better, but all I'm saying is that I think something was mentioned like this: stop intervening in Lebanon and doing whatever you need to do in Lebanon. Like every international, force wants to finish their business on Lebanese land. So, so leave us alone. Just, if you really want to listen to the people and stop, supporting the government. But I'm going to leave Dana with the politics. She's better than me in answering this.
Yeah, but also I just want to comment on that. He was acting like he's listening to the people because he went on the streets.
Definitely, but this is the hypocrisy. I'm like, it's their agenda, but on Lebanese soil. So I think it's been like this forever. We're used to it. Where people were in the streets talking to Macron, it was because they were, emotionally distressed and they just wanted someone to listen to them. It was not because it was Macron. It could be anyone. They just want someone to listen that, please, we are hostages of this government. Help us in set us free. Help us in setting ourselves free. Stop sabotaging every single initiative that we take as people. This was, I think, the huge cry that the Lebanese people wanted to say. It was not about Macron. It was not about France. It was not about something in this sense. It was in like, please stop supporting them. Stop doing whatever you need to do for your country with our government and leave us alone. Just, I think this is it.
Dinah, do you agree?
Yes, but I would add, not deducting, I want to add. So the issue, I think the biggest issue with Macron is that there's this, with France in particular, because Macron has his own protests in France, which I think is extremely ridiculous that he comes here to listen to us when he's not listening to his own protesters. But it's okay. It's always been a situation where somehow being Arab, being in the Middle East and having these foreigners come in, this whole white savior complex is really what Macron had as he walked through the streets of Jemaise. This holier than thou, I shall come, my children. It's COVID and he was hugging people. I get that might have been a sentimental moment for him, but I do want to remind that our president did not go down to the streets. That's why they flogged Macron. They needed a presidential space in which they felt authority was present so they can talk to authority. We've never had that right. We never sit with our authority. We don't have access to our authority. Our authority has convoys and convoys. They close roads to cross the road. They close a highway for them to pass in their car. So we've never had, it's been always the elite and the rest of the country. There was an article that came out that was also a joke, death of the middle class. Lebanon never had a middle class. Lebanon had people surviving on the middle class line, thinking that they can sustain themselves that way, and poverty. And then everyone else, which was the rich and the elite families that have been ruling as militias in this country. When it comes to Macron in particular, I go back to my previous point. Before you want to come into this country and pretend that you're here to save us, stop selling the government the things that kill me. I don't need you to save me from me. I need you to save me from you. I need you to stop funding these entities. I need you to stop pretending like you're here to listen and then go sit with Aoun and Birre in their office and legitimize their presence when you know dang well that they have no access to actual people and population for, let's say, the popular vote or the popular opinion or any of these notions. So the first thing is stop legitimizing a government that we've dropped 3 times. We've brought them down. 2 governments resigned. The parliament remains. We are one of the only countries, I believe, in the world that has a president, a prime minister, and a parliament. So that confusion's all over the place. With Macron, I think it's best to say, you've colonized enough. The best way for you to stop helping is to stop funding the entities that oppress us. And I say that to every country all over the world, from America and onwards, because they do come and they sit. These ambassadors, they come and they sit and they legitimize this government and then ask what this government needs and then go and do press conferences and say, well, our aid is going to go to NGOs. Yeah, but what you're doing is you're giving us a broom after they destroyed the place. How about you help us to stop destroying it?
Amazing. Yeah, we have one more question from Travis, is how can we contribute to your organizations directly? I would suggest and ask both of you to put your if you are okay with that, your emails and or links to funds to fund me or something like this. I don't know what kind of direct funding or direct corporation you want. You can add that to the chat so everybody can have access to it, or maybe later we can also, like, you can tell me these are the ways that we want people to help us, and I can share it with whoever wants to have that. So yeah, please feel free to put it in the chat, and people can have it. We have one more question from Mark. He's like follow-up question to the Israeli question. If any Israeli LGBT NGOs offer direct assistance to your Lebanese LGBT groups, would you accept it? Feel free, whoever wants to answer.
No, just one word. Israel is the enemy, and we do not collaborate with the enemy. So, no. Very simply.
Dinah, no more comment.
No.
You are muted.
It's not called Israel. It's called Occupied Palestine, and no, we do not collaborate. But thank you.
Yeah, there is many comments in the chat about Macron, and people agree with what you both said, and it's very hypocrite of him. We have one more question. Have any American LGBT organizations donated to you? From Stephanie. No. Dinah said no. Pascal said no.
No.
Okay, there's the email of Dinah. You can directly contact her. Whoever wants to be in direct contact with Dinah for help or for more information, she's offering that through her email. I have one more question, maybe to Pascal. What about mental health and well-being? I know it might be a ridiculous question at the moment under this humanitarian crisis that's taking place in all Lebanon. As you said, it's not only Beirut, but of course Beirut was like more than half of it was demolished totally. So that's why we are using Beirut the whole time. Yeah, but Pascal, what about mental health now? And especially our organization that works with that in normal days.
Yeah, it's a very important question because mental health is health after all. So just like we take care of our health, we should take care of our mental health. Now, there has been many responses on a mental health level. It started with the COVID-19. So where people were in lockdown. So we as Mosaic, for example, started the initiative of emergency interventions specifically for COVID, for the LGBT persons that were in lockdown. They were not able to see anyone because all the activities stopped. So, we continued this after the blast. Now, on a psychological level, of course, at first, it's not the symptoms that or the mental state that you want to work on. So first, it's like the psychological first aid, which is throughout all of our services. So whether we're doing a phone call to make sure that someone is okay, there's a psychological component in it. So this is very important. And now, of course, the people we are working with and us also, we have been through a lot in Lebanon. So we had like 30 years of wars, and people coming from Syria also witnessed war. So it's not the first trauma we go through. So most of the population, even before, let's say 2020, had a lot of symptoms of anxiety and major depressive disorder. So today, even more. It increased more with everything that was happening. There's an initiative that has been done on a government level. We have what we call the MHPSS task force, so with the Ministry of Health. So where psychologists or mental health advisors from different NGOs meet with the government, so with the Ministry of Health, specifically the Department of Mental Health, to put on a national if you want action plan on how to help people who have been more specifically touched by whatever happened in Beirut. So this is one initiative by the government, but it's mainly the actors are the NGOs, so the local NGOs and international NGOs in Lebanon, plus some people who are working individually. So, so today it's very early to see if you want the effect of this everything that is happening on the mental health of Lebanese people. We're still in acute stress. We're still trying to process what happened. Many of us are still under shock and in denial. So we need to wait like at least 3 months, all right, to really see the impact on mental health. With everything that is happening, I don't see the prognosis very positive, unfortunately. But as usual, we're going to cope and we're going to move on. I'm not sure if this is a good strategy. And this is something new. I don't know if I can take 1 more minute to answer. This is something new we've seen in Lebanon, people rebelling against the word of resilience. Usually, whenever a trauma happened, we're resilient, we're Lebanese, we're going to reconstruct. For the first time, the Lebanese people are saying no. No, we're not okay. No, we're not resilient. Stop labelizing us as resilient people. Stop doing this. We're fed up. All right, and this time we won't stay quiet. So we want to voice out that we're not okay. So, and I think this is really healthy after everything that happened for us to say enough is enough. So this is something very important.
Dinah, are you working with any, providing any services, directing people to seek help from people who are traumatic and so?
Yeah. So in our shelter, we have a group of psychologists that are referred to us by Sandra Melhem and the Queer Relief Fund, and they come every other day, depending on who's in the shelter ready to. They have schedules with the people living in the shelter. So the day they moved in, they all had evaluations. They all sat with shrinks, and they've been doing it ever since weekly. We also did a week of intensive drama therapy so they can get out and express a bunch of things. In the end, we're an arts organization, so we're also online, social media-wise. What we've done is we've given our Instagram and our Facebook to different artists and activists so they can voice how they're coping and dealing with the trauma that they've just endured. This is our way of also maintaining that we are in the art world, and we want to ensure that we're using our tools and our network to expand and get more information out there. We're working with a doctor named Werde. She's very known as on Instagram influencer. So she creates very interesting ways, very interesting conversations in a way. So she makes extremely complex things into ways that are simplified so that people can slowly start asserting. We worked with Beirut by Dijk, two of these psychologists that were working for free. I'm working directly with Lisa Lux now. Lisa Lux is working with therapists from Europe and the UK that can offer free services, because I'm sure Pascal and everyone, A, is overwhelmed, and B, they also need to have a moment to deal with the trauma they just endured, because most of the psychologists that we're going to were also part of the people that experienced the blast and probably still need to take care of themselves, as I'm sure most of psychologists in Lebanon are not. They've all given free time and free services to assist everyone else in coping through this. But what we're trying to do is to bring internationals in that haven't experienced the blast, that could help with trauma in particular, so that the load can be lessened off of the psychologists in Lebanon, whether it be cognitive or whether it be psychoanalytical, just so that people can have access to more and more availability, and at the same time the shrinks and the psychologists in the country can also have access to people that they can feel comfortable speaking to, because I'm sure they're not going to speak to each other here. They all know each other. They still need to go to someone who's unknown so that they can feel comfortable, and that's what we're trying to set up by the end of the year.
For sure. Pascal also added her email to the chat option, so both emails are there available, and I would also ask you both, please, to post your organization websites or Instagram or Facebook pages that people who are attending this webinar can also have a look on the work that's been going on, and what you just said, Dinah, about giving space to artists, to people to express themselves as part of the well-being and expressing the shock and the trauma. If there is no more questions actually to this at this point, I would like to thank everybody who attended this webinar today. I would like to thank Pascal. Thank you, Pascal. Thank you, Dinah, for your inputs and for all the efforts and that you are doing and putting down in our beloved city and beloved people Beirut and Lebanon. And thank you all for all the participants and to everyone who supported the community in Lebanon through fundraising or any other mean, and the ones who are planning to do so. Thank you again, and have a good day, good afternoon, and good evening for different time zones. And thank you so much. And we will continue these webinars, and we would love to have you in all of them. Just follow us, follow Outright to know about more the webinars that's coming soon. Good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.